Welcome everyone to another CTC Software webinar. My name is Sean Zerbis, the Director of BIM Development here at CTC Software, and today we're going to be continuing the HIVE CMS User Learning Series, focusing on how to use and insert content out of HIVE. Now, as always, we record these webinars so you can always review them later, and also, as always, if you're participating live with us in the webinar, you can ask questions by using the GoToWebinar questions window, and I try to answer those live while we're going through the topics. And we also save a huge Q&A session at the end as well, if you're participating with us live here. So let's discuss or kind of talk a little bit about what we're going to cover today. So as an end user, if you're in HIVE and you finally found exactly what it is you're looking for, that's great. But how do you actually use it? How do you consume that content and use it in your projects, use it, to read whatever the content might be? How do we go about doing that? Well, in this webinar, that's exactly what we're going to talk about. We're going to cover all the different ways that you can insert content or use content, all the way from basic steps all the way through a couple more slightly advanced steps and some specific things that are application centric. I mean, there really are some important things and some nuances to Revit content that you probably want to know a little bit about, so you can understand exactly how HIVE is going to insert that content into your project and what that means. This also affects AutoCAD content, by the way. So while I, kind of wrote Revit on the slide, it's Revit and AutoCAD both. They both use these same sort of functions. So what are we going to cover here? We're going to talk about four major things. We're going to understand what the double-click action does in HIVE. We're going to take a look at the right-click option and right-click insertion options. We are going to describe what happens when we use the update content option from the right-click, because there is an option for updating content. And we're also going to take a look at inserting multiple items in one step into your active drawing directly. Now, because I'm not big on death by PowerPoint, I'm going to jump in live and take a look at this. And first, we're going to be talking a little bit about double-click. Now, before I can really do anything with double-click here with HIVE, what I want to do is I want to make sure that I have found something that I want to insert. Now, we've talked about searching in other webinars. We've talked about some advanced searching and filtering in some of those webinars as well. Here, I'm simply going to start a brand new project by using a pre-saved search here. It's going to run a search for everything in a specific library and provide back to me just Revit content in this case. I do have a current session of Revit open right here. It's Revit 2020, though of course HIVE in its current form works 2019 through 23. But I'm just going to be using 2020 in this example. What I'm going to do is take any one of these templates. We'll use the 2020 template. I'm simply going to double click on it, detach and preserve its work sets, and let that open up into my active Revit session here. It's probably going to need to cache it locally, and it's going to present me with my open work sets dialog, because that's how I have my template set up, and it's going to open up into the Revit space. Now, I did that really quickly, but that effectively is exactly how content should work in HIVE. You simply double click on it, and it does something. It loads it in directly into whatever your active design app is, if it's relevant, or it opens the file in whatever the reader might be for that file type. That's exactly how HIVE CMS is designed to function. Let's give another example here. I'm going to clear my results, and I'm going to search for something like shared coordinates. Maybe I want to know how to deal with that. Now, I'm going to find a number of items that relate to shared coordinates. One of them here is my standards PDF that talks exactly about establishing shared coordinates. And when I double click on this, what it's going to do is cache the file. It's going to open that file in whatever my native PDF reader happens to be, which for me, I believe is Microsoft Edge, oddly enough. And so I now have the ability here to read through that standards document and do whatever it says. So I've got it. That was simply double clicking on a file. So double click is the key way that normally we're going to be inserting content into a project. Now, I want to give another example here real quick, just so we can kind of see this. I am going to load in a wall type. Let's just kind of quickly grab a wall type and draw something here. So we'll grab this interior 8-inch partition real quick. When I double click on that, it's going to load in that wall definition into my active project, and it's going to begin the drawing of that wall in my active project as well. Similarly here, if I was to go search for some doors, go find some doors here, I could double click on this door. This one is actually going to be coming from Revit 2018. So I wanted to grab this one in particular to show you what happens when I load this in. Now, when this gets dropped into my project from 2018, I can choose any number of types that I want to load. And what you'll see here flashing is that temporary one-time upgrade as it loads it into my active project. Sometimes you might see it more than once depending on what that content happens to be as it loads. In this case, I don't think I'm actually going to see that door in the floor plan because I don't have a proper view for it. Let's create one real quick here just so we can see a plan view of level 1 here, main floor. There we go. There we go. So first floor plan, here's that door inserted now into my active project. It's loaded exactly what I wanted. Now I did that on purpose because I want to take a look next at right-click options, but I want to pair that with my double-click option that I already did. So let's take a look at what happens when I double-click that same door family again. So swing single, I'm going to double-click on it, same door, double-click, go over here into Revit, and it doesn't ask me anything about loading any additional types. Now, why is that? Well, the way that Hive works is it looks in your active project first to see, is that object already in there? And if it is, it just inserts it. It doesn't have to go reload that object back into your model. And that can be great because you can simply run searches in Hive, find what you want, double click, and if it's already in your project, it just inserts it straight away. And that can save quite a lot of time. But sometimes you might want to do something extra. So let's take a look at the right-click options that exist on content and see what is available here. So there's a few options. There's open, which actually opens the original family. That will download the family to your computer, and it will open that family in the family editor. Normally, you're probably not going to want to do that. Now, if I was talking about a PDF file, I probably do want to open it. The next option down is load. Load is exactly the same as double click. When I double click, it loads it. It basically loads it into my active drawing and starts the insert command for it if it's Revit content or DWG content. If it is any other kind of content, it's basically the exact same thing as open. So my double click loads it, which loads it into my active design document editor, if it's a Word document or Excel or PDF reader or whatever. It just opens it. There's a command here called reload. Reload, what it lets you do is if you have that thing opened already in your active design session, or loaded, I should say, in your active design session, it will forcibly reload that object. It's kind of the same thing as you going to something like insert load family, browsing to the original definition and reloading the original definition into your drawing. It doesn't just insert it, it actually reloads it first and then it inserts it. That's what the right-click reload option does. So sometimes if your family in your project gets really out of alignment with the original, or there's been a really important update to the original and you want to get that in your active design, you simply right-click on that content and choose reload, and it will reload it back in. There's another one here that lets you get access to the details about that particular piece of content. It'll open up the details panel and show you the details for this content. In my case, this happens to be favorited content. You can tell from the heart right here. But if I was to remove that from my favorites, then it would unfavorite that content. And the next time I ran my doors search here, CTC doors, that would no longer have the little heart logo right there. I could again right-click, and if it wasn't a favorite, the option is mark as favorite. So it's either mark as favorite or remove from favorites, either way. And then depending on your rights to the library, sometimes you may have the ability to manipulate some tagging options here to assign tags and to remove tags from that particular explicit piece of content, or if you selected multiple pieces of content. Okay. The most important ones, though, we're talking about today is using the content. So we're talking about open, load, and reload, those three things. And double-click in Revit is the exact same thing as load. Unless it's already in your active drawing, then it will simply place what's already in your model. That's what double-click does. Or if I right-click and choose load, It's going to do the exact same thing. It just places it. We don't have to wait for anything. So that's kind of the explanation of a few of those right-click options that we have at our fingertips. Some of you may also have a right-click download option. Depending on how your admins have set up your environment, there might be the ability to right-click and download a specific piece of content. But most admins have that disabled just because the goal is to have you able to load what you need on demand and to open what you need on demand. So that's the general intent. So let's jump back over here and take a look at what the process is for updating content that may already be in your model. So now we're going to switch over to updating content here. And it's very much the same thing. We're just going to continue on this right click over here because I can simply reload this family. When I reload it, it's going to open up and display once again, just like before, that same type selector that I had. Now I could choose the same type that I had before, or I can choose an additional type if I wanted. If I choose an existing type that was already in my model, it will replace the definition of that type specifically in my model so that it is reset to the original definition for that type. And if I'm loading any additional types here, if I wanted more available to me in my active model, I can simply select an additional one, choose to select those loaded types, and it will once again reload that content into my active model. And now over here I have three options, with the FG option actually having been replaced with the latest definition. Okay? So now, of course, I can go place more objects here in my floor plan, and I'm off and running. Now, sometimes it's meaningful to insert more than one thing at the same time. So I might want more than just the one door, or let's use another example here. Maybe I wanted more than just the one wall that I chose earlier. So I'm going to jump back into Revit here and point something out. If I select this wall right here and take a look at my list, I have a number of generic walls that are available because of the template that I chose when I first started today. But in addition to that, I loaded one additional wall type, my type A 8-inch. And that's all well and good, but you know what? I want a few more of those type A walls. I want the 6-inch and the 4 7/8 inch. I want a couple of them. So how do I load more than one at a time? You know, I can search for it. We know that we can search for walls. In this case, I have a pre-saved search again, and I can find some of those. Or I can refine my search up here by, explicitly saying, give me type A. I misspelled type A. That's fantastic. I can't spell today. Give me type A. Thank you. There we go. And I can see that I have explicitly 6 different wall types that I want to bring into my project, perhaps. Well, if I select these, one at a time, I can pick them here with the control key held down if there was very discrete wall types that I wanted. Or I can select and use my shift key, sort of like you can in Windows, and I can get the entire selection. It kind of goes horizontally before it goes to the next row. So it goes across and then down to the next row and across again. So wherever I pick, I can get a bunch of those objects highlighted here. But you can also, as you probably know from previous webinars that we've done, you can change to a list view, and you can do that same sort of selection here in a list view. It kind of makes it a bit more obvious sometimes when you're selecting objects in series. My personal preference is the tile view, just like icons on your desktop of Windows. But you can select multiple items, and then when you right-click, you get that same sort of right-click menu where I could mark all of them as favorites or remove them all from favorites. I could choose to load all of these walls into my project. If I knew that some of those walls already existed, like my type A 8-inch, I could forcibly reload all of these walls into my project, so it actually redefines the A 8-inch as well. But in this case, I'm going to choose just a couple of these. We'll just do these first 3 right here. And I'm going to load all 3 of them into my project model. One of them already exists, so it's not going to reload that one at all. It's just going to reload the other two rather, that are brand new definitions here. But it's going to go fetch all 3 of them and bring them into my design environment so that they are available to me. And once that happens to be done, then when I'm selecting my wall types up here and I go take a look at my list, those 3 wall types now are all going to be available to me. So I did not need to double click on each one individually or load each one individually. I can very easily grab a number of them, right-click, load them all at once, and it will just bring them all in. Now, when you choose the load command, if there's more than one chosen, like this was here, I chose 3 and chose load. When you do that, you'll notice it didn't actually start the wall command. And it does that because you may be loading a number of different kinds of objects. You might have loaded some details, some sheets, some schedules, some doors, all kinds of different things, and it wouldn't know which command to initiate. So whenever you have more than one object selected, even if it's the same category, it doesn't matter, it will just load the definition into your active model, and that's it. Just going to load it, and then it's there for you to use. So that makes Hive a very good starting point for everything that you need. We talked earlier about the ability to simply just double click on something, have it look to see, do I need to load it or not? And if it doesn't, it just simply draws it for me, and I'm in here drawing whatever that wall type is. Same thing with the doors, same thing with everything else. Or you can right click and forcibly reload something if you need to, or you can choose multiple objects, right click and load or forcibly reload multiple objects all at the same time. Okay, I hope that was incredibly meaningful for you. So, we're going to go ahead and probably shut this down here in just a minute, but I want to say thank you to all of you who show up live to our presentations and participate with us. So we do hope to see you in future CTC webinars. Of course, you can subscribe to them or sign up for them from our events page on ctcsoftware.com. So one final time, I'm going to go ahead and say thank you, and we always look forward to seeing you in future sessions. Have a fantastic day.